At Larry's company annual party, his first love and I were wearing the exact same dress. Everyone said he would definitely stand by my side. But he said to me, either take it off right now, or get out. I threw a glass of red wine at them, breaking away from my usual good girl image. I moved out of the villa to the beach to clear my mind. The next day, a typhoon warning came, and the port was closed. His brother advised him to reconcile with me. He casually replied, "She's just a stand-in, I'm already tired of her. If you care so much, you go talk to her." Later, when the port reopened, Larry aggressively stopped me. "Joan, had enough fun? Come home with me. Don't scare my wife, it was hard enough convincing her to come back." His brother smirked, "Plus, she should love me, not a stand-in like you." Tina walked in, wearing the same dress as me. Everyone's eyes fell on her. Larry's hand quickly left my waist. I could visibly see him step forward, putting some distance between us. A voice in the crowd said, "Tina is wearing the same dress as Joan. Larry will surely stand up for Joan." Tina seemed to think so too. She timidly approached me, tears in her eyes. "Miss Joan, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were wearing this dress too. I thought he only gave it to me." After she finished speaking, she lowered her head, wiping away her tears as if I had bullied her. People who didn't know her relationship with Larry tried to flatter me by scolding her. Joan's dress was posted by Larry on his official account a month ago. "Are you blind?" Larry glanced coldly at that person but looked at me, saying, "Daring to wear the same dress as my wife? Take it off now or leave." Seeing Larry angry, everyone began blaming Tina, calling her an outdated actress who didn't know her place. Some even envied me, thinking Larry was deeply in love with me. But they didn't know Larry was with me just to spite Tina. He posted the dress photo to make her jealous. Tina raised her head, a tear sliding down her cheek as she looked pitifully at Larry. "I came here to reconcile with you. Do you really want me to undress in front of everyone?" Larry's face showed little emotion, but I clearly saw a smile at the corner of his lips. The person who defended me rushed up and started tugging at Tina's clothes. "You think an actress like you can get back with Larry? I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of his fiancée." As Tina's dress was about to be ripped, Larry couldn't fake it any longer. He sprang forward, holding Tina tightly and growled, "Tina is my girlfriend. Touch her again, and see what happens." In an instant, everyone's eyes shifted to me. They seemed to be asking, "If Tina is Larry's girlfriend, who are you?" When my mom was in the late stages of cancer, she wanted the respect of being a wealthy woman's wife. So, my dad and I made a deal, and he sent me to Larry to act as Tina's stand-in. Every day, I wore clothes I didn't like, did things I didn't want to do, waiting for someone who didn't like me. Had never thought of escaping because Larry was my salvation 3 years ago. I always wondered if I could win his heart by being the way he liked. But in the end, I was just a shadow. Larry took off his jacket, gently draped it over Tina's shoulders, and kissed the tear at her eye. Turning around, he looked at me coldly, ordering like before, "Either take it off now or get out." Mocking voices echoed around. This time, not at Tina, but at me. Some people even took out their phones, ready to record my humiliation. I clenched my fists, silently staring at Larry. Tina, seeing he wasn't paying attention, gave me a provocative glance, then hugged him, choking out, "Larry, forget it. You've already stood up for me. I don't want to make things difficult for anyone else. Besides, I think Miss Joan didn't mean it. She just wanted to rise up too much and wore the wrong dress." Larry held her close, disdainfully saying to me, "Now that Tina's back, there's no reason for you to stay. Take off the dress and get out." His affectionate eyes turned icy when he looked at me. But with Tina, they were as warm as melted snow, gentle as water. This is the difference between a stand-in and true love. Suddenly, I couldn't take it anymore. Always belittling myself and flattering him was really tiring. Larry looked more furious than before. "Joan, did you hear what I said?" I took a deep breath, grabbed a glass of red wine, and threw it at both him and Tina in full view of everyone. With that done, I didn't wait for his response and turned to leave. The room was filled with gasps. But before I could step out of the event hall, Larry had someone throw me into the pool. He said, "Let her stay there and calm down. She can come out when she's thought it through." Larry's brother couldn't bear to see it and pulled me out of the pool, earnestly advising me. "Can't you find your place? What right does a stand-in have to compete?" Those who knew my family's situation couldn't help but say, "You've angered him, what's your family going to do now? Don't forget you're doing this for them." Initially, I did come as a stand-in for my family. But I fell in love with Larry for 3 years just because he held an umbrella for me on that rainy night when my mom passed away. "You shouldn't have caused a scene today. If you had kept your cool, you might have won Larry's heart. But I'm tired. I can't keep throwing myself at him like a moth to a flame." That night, while Larry strode in pleased with himself, arm in arm with Tina, I had already packed my bags at the villa. He raised an eyebrow mockingly. "Thought it through? Realized your mistake?" I didn't respond and changed my shoes, suitcase in hand. His face immediately darkened as he questioned coldly, "Joan, haven't you had enough? Don't forget, you still depend on me." Tina feigned concern, saying, "I've already agreed to let Larry continue supporting you. Isn't that enough for you? What, do you still want to fight me for the title of Mrs. Larry and make him your personal ATM for life?" I didn't answer, just returned Larry's supplementary card. His face grew even grimmer. "So you don't care about your own survival?" "I've never used the money on that card." I said this one sentence and turned away. Larry punched the door in anger, sneering, "Stop all business with the J Group. Let's see if they still dare to teach this daughter." Feeling that wasn't enough, he yelled at me, "If you don't come back and admit you were wrong within 7 days, I'll really leave you." I moved out of Larry's villa and didn't return to the J Group. Instead, I took a boat to Deer Island. Deer Island is my mom's hometown, where she lived the longest before she passed. Losing love made me miss my mom even more. As soon as I reached the small courtyard, I got a typhoon warning. There aren't many people on the island, and all the shops were closed early due to the warning. I had no food or water stored here. I had to contact Anne to see if she could help. But when I made the video call, Larry appeared on the screen, passionately kissing Tina. Anne glared at them, saying loudly on purpose, "What? You have no water or food over there?" She then turned to face the two who had stopped kissing. Larry sneered without a care, saying, "She brought this on herself. I already gave her a chance. Can you speak like a human being?" Anne cried angrily, "It's a typhoon. She'll die there alone." Seeing Anne so upset for me made me feel bad too. I was about to tell her not to plead with Larry anymore. But Lucas, who had been sitting in the corner silently, suddenly asked Larry, "A typhoon could kill her. Are you really not going to get her back?" Larry's brow furrowed slightly, but Tina hugged him, whispering something in his ear, and Larry said, "She's just a substitute. I'm tired of her. If you want, go get her yourself." I couldn't listen anymore. I hung up the call with trembling fingers and texted Anne not to involve those people again. "I'll find another way," I said. But on this small island, there was really nothing I could do. At night, strong winds knocked out the power. In the dark, I curled up on the sofa. The wild wind and torrential rain outside reminded me of the night my mom passed away. I suddenly feared I'd meet the same fate, bidding farewell to this world in such a storm. Lost and helpless, someone banged heavily on my door. When I opened it, I saw Lucas's cold, indifferent face. He stood outside in a black suit, backlit, his deep gaze locking onto me. Instinctively, I gripped the door handle, defensive but speechless. Lucas is Larry's brother, the real power holder. People say he's ruthless, violent, and a merciless killer. On my first day with Larry, I saw him break a man's leg. I feared him even more than Larry. For these 3 years, I never dared to approach him or speak a complete sentence to him. It wasn't until I was in Lucas's car that I realized he might be here to take me off Deer Island. As the car started, he focused on his documents. He seemed like an ice sculpture, emitting a chilling aura. I sat close to the door, fingers almost digging a hole into the leather upholstery. I wanted to hide in it. As we passed the port, I gathered the courage to speak politely. "Thank you for picking me up. You can drop me off at the port ahead. I'm done with Larry. I shouldn't keep accepting care from his family. Moreover, Lucas is someone I genuinely fear." He set the documents down, staring at me like a predator, voice icy. "All routes are closed. Are you planning to swim back?" His serious tone made me shiver. I lowered my head, muttering, "Then why did you come to get me?" After I spoke, the car's temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Dangerous eyes bored into my head, forcing me to lower it even more. Lucas's slender fingers gripped my chin. He said, "Joan, never bow to anyone. Not even me." My heart skipped a beat. People around me always told me to be obedient, to live humbly and endure everything. Lucas was the first to tell me not to bow. And it seemed, maybe, Lucas wasn't as terrifying as I thought. "Remember, your mom loved you. She didn't want you to suffer in this world." Lucas spoke firmly. He even courteously supported my waist, drawing me closer to him. Seeing this side of him for the first time, I was slightly dumbfounded. The car suddenly made a sharp turn, and I crashed right into his arms. Seeing his furrowed brows, I was too nervous to move. I was terrified that even a slight move might anger him, and he'd break my legs like he did to that guy before. Lucas's expression remained stoic as he steadied me by the shoulders, coldly saying, "Scared of me?" I tried hard to steady my voice. "No, not at all. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bump into you." Then, I lowered my head. Lucas seemed annoyed, telling the driver coldly to drive more steadily, and then he ignored me. The atmosphere in the car grew even more tense. I followed Lucas nervously to his villa on Deer Island. He had a servant take me to a guest room and didn't pay me any more attention. Honestly, I was exhausted and didn't spend much time thinking about his attitude. I fell asleep on the big bed. The next morning, hunger woke me up. Barefoot, I went to the living room, only to find Lucas in a video conference. He wore a white shirt, buttoned up all the way, hugging his slender neck. He looked both abstinent and tempting. I was so entranced that I didn't notice knocking over a blue and white porcelain vase. Before I could even apologize, Lucas was already up, his gaze like a scalpel cutting straight to my feet. "Why aren't you wearing shoes?" Startled by his strict tone, I curled my toes. Forgot. Lucas, face stern, came over and picked me up. Instinctively, I wrapped my arms around his neck and glanced at the still active computer, whispering, "Am I interrupting your work?" Would he be angry at me for causing a distraction? Dark currents flowed in Lucas's deep eyes. He turned to the computer and said, "That's all for today. My wife's awake. I need to feed her." Larry's suggestive laughter came through the video. "Bro, you got a woman now? So you're into ladies, not men? Let me take a look at her. I've seen plenty of women. I can help you check her out." As Larry spoke, I buried my face in Lucas's chest, too scared to lift my head. Lucas, looking down at me, ignored Larry, carefully carrying me back to the bedroom and placing me on the bed. By the time I came around, he had already pulled a pair of cotton socks from the closet. With a gentleman's grace and gentleness, he knelt down and put the socks on me. Blushing, I said, "Lucas, I can do it myself." But he didn't stop. "Joan, girls are born to be pampered. You can't let one person's mistake make you doubt yourself. If you love the wrong person, let go of yourself in time. No one can make you suffer, not even you." As Lucas finished putting on my socks and swapped them for slippers, his words lingered in my mind. After breaking up with Larry, I had never let go of myself. I hid in my mom's room, like a snail afraid to venture out. But my life was just beginning. Why should I live it in resentment and grievance? After we disappeared from the video, Lucas's meeting ended for good. Larry closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair, idly sipping his coffee. A friend beside him chuckled, "The girl in your brother's video just now had nice long legs, like Joan." Honestly, I really like Joan's legs since you guys broke up. Do you mind if I go after her? Larry frowned but deliberately said, "Go for it, I'm not stopping you." Well, don't mind if I do, the friend laughed carelessly. But Larry's face suddenly darkened. His friend also stopped laughing. Seriously, just kidding. I don't go for the goody two-shoes type. Besides, she's not fickle like Tina. She's loyal, she only ever had eyes for you. Larry stared at his coffee cup, Joan's face flashing in his mind. Joan was well behaved. Even knowing he saw her as a pet and wouldn't touch her, she stayed loyal. That put him more at ease than Tina did. If she calmed down and figured out how to keep loving him, he'd fetch her from Deer Island after getting engaged to Tina. Keep her by his side, giving her all the affection except the title. After all, a girl as obedient and pure as Joan was rare. After the typhoon passed, the sky looked freshly washed. A rainbow appeared above Lucas's villa. When I went out to see the rainbow, Lucas was already sitting in the garden. Beside him was a small swing, just like the one I used to sit on as a child. Do you like it? Gazing at the swing, I was lost in thought. Lucas appeared behind me, asking softly, "Want to give it a try?" Larry's villa had a swing too. But every time I wanted to sit on it, Larry would coldly say, "That's Tina's. You're just a stand-in, you don't deserve it." His eyes only ever saw Tina, forgetting many things didn't belong exclusively to her. Others, too, had the right to like them. This was the first time I sat on a swing since my mom passed away. Lucas stood behind me, gently pushing. As an adult, it was the first time I felt genuinely happy. It was like I could be that little girl my mom used to spoil again. Joan, when you're happy, smile. You're not anyone's shadow, you're your own light. Lucas's voice came from behind me. His voice was cold, but each word was warm. It chased away the gloom that had covered my heart for 3 years. Suddenly, I felt relief. I should be Joan, free from all constraints, just being myself. 3 days later, Lucas and I returned to New York. Right off the plane, we ran into one of his business partners. A fat man walked up with a sycophantic smile, nearly bumping into me. Lucas shielded me protectively, coldly spitting out, "Move." That man's gaze flicked over me as he was led away, making me very uncomfortable. Lucas seemed to sense my unease too, saying sternly, "Don't like him?" I nodded. "Then I won't work with him anymore." I didn't expect a business-savvy man like Lucas to say that and looked at him in surprise, blurting out, "Lucas, you're acting like a king who's lost his mind over beauty." As soon as the words were out, I regretted them, lowering my head and wishing I could take them back. His finger lightly scraped my nose tip, and he actually chuckled and said, "If you like, I can be a lazy king for you my whole life." I'm not a fool with Lucian's company in these subtle flirts. I knew what he meant. But he's Larry's brother. And I wasn't sure if he would be genuine towards me, or just like Larry who had no real feelings, just whims. So even though I heard it clearly, I just rubbed my nose and pretended not to understand. I thought the airport incident was just a blip. But on the day I went to get documents from the J Corporation, I ran into that fat man again. He and 4 guys cornered me in an alley. "If it weren't for you, Larry wouldn't have canceled our deal. This time I'm gonna ruin you and give Lucas a tough time." After he said that, he ordered his men to cover my mouth with a wet handkerchief. I soon lost consciousness. When I woke up again, my eyes were covered with a black lace blindfold. My wrists and ankles were tied up. 2 women were spreading flower petals on the big bed while discussing changing me into a camisole nightdress. I had no strength, and once they placed me on the bed, I couldn't move at all. "She's beautiful." If I were a man, I couldn't resist. Jack's guest is in for a treat tonight. I didn't know who Jack's guest was, but I knew what was coming. Fear spread through my body the moment the door closed. My palms were sweaty as I wriggled desperately, trying to reach the phone next to me. But it was useless. Suddenly, I felt so helpless. Why, just when I decided to let things go and start over, did fate have to shut this door on me? Am I really undeserving of happiness? Just as I was about to break down, the door opened. I heard the heavy footsteps of a man, and through the lace blindfold, I watched his long shadow approach me. I trembled violently, whimpering, trying to speak, but my mouth was taped shut, and I couldn't make a sound. "Stay out." Lucas's voice suddenly rang out. He took off his suit jacket and draped it over me, his actions gentle. But his voice to the guys behind him was icy. "Break their legs. Compile their cases from these years and hand them over to the police." A few bodyguards nodded and closed the door. Only then did Lucas remove my blindfold and peel the tape from my mouth. His normally stern face was clouded with anger, but softened when he saw my fear. He held me, kissing my hair over and over. "I'm sorry. I didn't protect you." For some reason, his voice trembled a bit. His eyes darkened as he looked at my neckline. I saw him take a deep breath and put on the blindfold he had just removed. I didn't understand. "Why are you wearing the blindfold?" He cupped my face, speaking softly. "I'm afraid I can't control myself and might hurt you." At that moment, I suddenly understood what my mom said: love is restraint, not reckless possession. I couldn't help but hug him and let myself cry. He held me the whole time, letting me vent all my emotions without saying a word to interrupt. It was the first time someone truly cherished me, and I selfishly wanted to try it. Lucas took me back to his villa. He, like Larry, didn't live with the elders of the Liu family. But he was different from Larry. His villa was clean, without any trace of other women. Even the housekeeper secretly told me, Lucas was so clean that the Liu family thought he liked men. He'd casually hint to me, "If you marry Larry, no one would question Larry's orientation anymore." Every time, as I pondered how to respond, Lucas would calmly tell the housekeeper, "She's not anyone's accessory. She has the right to choose her own life." He was different from Larry. Not at all like the people from the Joan family. I told Anne Lucas was the most gentlemanly, most respectful man I've ever met. And scoffed, teasing, "That's because you've never seen his ruthless side. But it shows he truly loves and cares for you. Joan, if he proposes, you should say yes." I laughed and shook my head. "He won't propose to me. He respects me too much. He only dares to test the waters, never daring to confess outright." I'd been with Lucas for almost half a month, and his care was always meticulous. The only time I saw him lose his cool was when Jack tried to trap me. So I couldn't believe he'd ever confess or propose to me. Love shouldn't be a motionless rock. It should be like flowing water. Only by actively approaching can it converge into a vast ocean. And, slightly frustrated, advised me, "Give him a hint. Give him a chance, and give yourself a chance too." Should I really give a hint? As I hesitated, Larry made headlines. Because that morning, Tina publicly announced their engagement in an interview, even boasting that Larry would buy her a 20-carat diamond ring. The internet was buzzing with envy for Tina. But someone posted photos of Larry with another girl. In the photos, a girl resembling Tina was tugging on his arm, begging for a designer bag, which he bought using the same card he had given me. Netizens mocked, saying Tina was feeling threatened and forcing a proposal. But Tina snarkily replied that it was just their fun. "But I know, this isn't about any thrill, it's just how Larry is. He never truly loves any woman, not even Tina. It's all about his ego. Now that Tina's trying to get back together with him, he finds it boring and looks for someone new." I'm suddenly grateful that I walked out of his life. Otherwise, I'd be like Tina, trying to prove Larry's love exists in this way. "You like that diamond ring?" I hadn't noticed Lucas sitting beside me, and my phone was zoomed in on the diamond ring Tina wanted. Clearly, Lucas misunderstood and thought I wanted it. I explained to him, but the next day he took me to an auction anyway. We sat in a VIP box on the second floor. Larry and Tina were on the first floor. When that diamond ring appeared, Lucas had his assistant bid $20 billion. I heard everyone's expressions downstairs were quite something. Larry was reportedly so shocked he couldn't speak. People were curious about who Lucas was buying the ring for, but security kept them away. Is he buying it for a man? Someone outside speculated. I couldn't help but chuckle when I heard that. But the next moment, Lucas suddenly kissed me. It was the first time he initiated something like this. I was so shocked, I forgot to breathe. As I was about to suffocate, He bit my lip as if punishing me and whispered, "Joan, can you do me a favor?" My vision blurred, and I looked up. "What favor?" "Marry me and prove to them where my interests lie," he said. When I got the marriage certificate, I was still in a daze. Lucas didn't take me home right away. Instead, he took me to my mom's grave. I never thought a man like Lucas would do this. "Rest assured, I will take good care of Joan and never let her suffer," Lucas swore at my mom's grave. He even staked his future on it. I knew every word he said was true. He wasn't like Larry. He genuinely cared for me. After leaving the cemetery, Lucas took me to his family's villa. Honestly, I was scared everyone knew I used to be Larry's mistress. If his family cared about that, what would Lucas and I do? But when Lucas led me into the villa, it wasn't as scary as I thought. Lucas's family were kind to me. Even the food on the table was prepared to my tastes. "Joan, let us handle the wedding. You just do what you enjoy, we'll never force you," Lucas's mom said, holding my hand with pampering eyes. No one mentioned Larry, as if he was non-existent. "Lucas will be 28 next year. You should have a baby soon," the elders suddenly pushed after discussing the wedding. I blushed instantly. Lucas, holding my waist, coldly glanced at them and said with authority, "She's timid, don't scare her." At that moment, I realized it wasn't just me who feared Lucas. His family feared him too. But their kindness towards me wasn't out of fear. Leaving the villa, our car brushed past Larry's. He honked, signaling us to lower the window, but Lucas instructed the driver to ignore him. "Today's a good day, can't meet anyone unlucky," Lucas said. Larry had come to discuss his breakup with Tina. Restless from being unable to reach someone he wanted, Larry sought a substitute. But Tina, using the diamond ring to threaten him, made a scene. He never imagined his once idolized first love would become so ugly. So he sent her abroad decisively, ending it in the harshest way. My brother came with his wife? Larry regretted not following to see. After all, whoever Lucas married determined his share of the family assets. "Lucas is married, you should too," his mom urged. "I'll go find Joan tomorrow, and she'll marry me with a snap of my fingers," Larry retorted. Though Joan hadn't been reachable, he believed she'd marry him. Joan had said she loved him for 3 years, would do anything for him. He didn't believe she'd move on easily. "You think Joan's waiting for you?" his mom scoffed. Larry was about to affirm when a photo buzzed his phone. A friend had sent it. In the photo, Joan held another man's hand, laughing like a child. Even her Twitter said, "I thank my ex for teaching me to be obedient, but I thank my current partner for teaching me happiness." Larry's confidence shattered. Ignoring his family's protests, he stormed out angrily. He thought Joan must have seen reports of him seeking substitutes. Like Tina, Joan was venting her anger with another man. No, there was no other man. She must have staged the photo to provoke him. He hated this tactic. He loved her obedient self more. That Joan felt more like his woman. But when Larry tried to get in touch with Joan again, he found out that Joan had blocked all their mutual friends. Finally, Larry lost it. "To everyone," he said, "I don't care what it takes, find Joan for me right now." After Lucas and I set the date for our wedding, we decided to visit Deer Island one last time. This was where our feelings started to change. I wanted to revisit and leave some footprints. I didn't expect to see Larry blocking my way at the port while I was buying flowers. I saw him with Tina at the auction that day and thought they would get married. But I never expected him to come looking for me. And I certainly didn't expect the intense possessiveness in his eyes. During my 3 years with Larry, this was the first time he looked at me like that. No one would believe it, but during those 3 years, I was just a toy for him, dressed up to look like Tina. He never really touched me, the most he did was hold my hand. And after holding hands, he would go wash his hands and apologize to Tina's photo, saying he felt dirty. I thought someone like that would stick with his original and forget about me completely. But here he was, gripping my hand tightly, anger boiling in his eyes, growling, "Joan, you've had your fun, stop testing my patience, or you'll regret it." I pried his fingers off and looked at him coldly. I knew he was trying to win me back, just like he did with Tina before, but this wasn't love. It was like a child throwing a tantrum after losing a toy. He's a child. But I'm not a child anymore. I wouldn't fall into his trap again because of his immaturity. Besides, my light was already beside me. What do you want to do? I asked. Larry, a bit irked, said, fine, you want me to care, you want a title, right? Come back with me, and I'll give it to you. His tone almost sounded like he was granting me a favor. But I wasn't his pet, I had my own dignity, and I didn't need his charity. Larry, there's no going back. I'm already married. I looked at him and shook my head coldly. Stop kidding. Who else would marry you or manage J Group for you? Larry sneered. Get real. If you keep causing trouble, you and J Group will be in big trouble. Always with threats. He was just a spoiled child who didn't know how to express himself properly. Even if he was wrong, he'd use childish tactics. Some people could stick with him for money, but I couldn't be with a boy like that anymore. I'm not lying. This is a wedding ring, I said, raising my hand. On my left ring finger was the diamond ring Lucas got me. Larry, who had been intimidating and aggressive, suddenly went pale. He first looked disbelieving, then started shouting, Joan, are you crazy? You dared to go after my brother. Do you even know what kind of person he is? He's just using you to get back at me. You're stupid, break up with him now. As he said this, he even rushed over, trying to force me to take off the ring. Looking at him, I suddenly realized how foolish I'd been to think he was my salvation and waste 3 years on him. When Lucas arrived, Larry was already oppressing me. Lucas pulled me into his arms and coldly said to Larry, keep your voice down. Don't scare my wife, I finally got her settled. Wear another shoe. Larry pointed at my face. This one is too worn out. I laughed in disbelief, who's the worn out shoe? Lucas lightly kissed my face and softly whispered in my ear, wait for me over there. I didn't want him to get hurt, but he touched my nose tip and gently pushed me to a safe spot. Joan is my wife. Do I need to explain it again? Lucas said, facing Larry. You took advantage. You stole my stuff. Larry roared like a madman and punched Lucas in the face. I didn't expect Lucas not to dodge. He covered his mouth and looked at him worriedly. When Larry's second punch came, Lucas blocked it. This punch was for me not telling you about my feelings beforehand. That was my fault. Lucas said. If you really want to make it right, divorce her and give her back to me. Larry shouted. We're brothers. You always shared everything with me. Lucas's eyes darkened, but Joan isn't a thing. She has the right to choose her own life. She should love me, not you, the imposter. Larry argued. Lucas looked at him. 3 years ago, if you hadn't pretended to be me, she wouldn't have fallen for you, you knew? Larry, who had been raging like a furious lion, suddenly deflated. I thought I hid it well. There are no secrets that last forever. Lucas turned to me with a guilty look and explained, I always thought you liked Larry, so I assumed you forgot our promise. After you two broke up, and told me you fell for him because of what he did 3 years ago. That's when I knew he used my identity to deceive you. Joan, I'm sorry. If I had known the truth sooner, I wouldn't have let you waste 3 years on him. I never thought the person who saved me in the rain 3 years ago was Lucas. And the person I promised to marry was him. And he remembered my words. Standing there, I needed time to process this shocking revelation. Lucas, like a prisoner awaiting execution, stood quietly in front of me, waiting for my judgment. Seeing his eyes and recalling all he had done for me, I hugged him tightly. Thank you, Lucas. Thank goodness it was you. Because it was him, I had no regrets. Crying, I reached up to kiss him. Lucas held my head, deepening the kiss while murmuring apologies into my lips. Eventually, Lucas and I left Larry behind and returned to his villa. We sat on the swing in the garden, watching the sunset. I asked Lucas, so, you've liked me since 3 years ago? Lucas nodded, for a long time. I smiled and stopped worrying about why Larry came to repay me then. Because I knew my future lay ahead, not in the past destroyed by Larry. People always need to look forward. Larry's epilogue. After coming back from Deer Island, I booked a ticket to go abroad. I just couldn't face Joan and my brother. Especially knowing that Joan had found out the truth from back then, I couldn't handle it. Actually, 3 years ago, when I heard Joan got into a car accident in the heavy rain, I wanted to check on her. After all, from a certain angle, Joan's face kind of resembled Tina's, but I was scared to see her all covered in blood, would have given me a psychological shadow. So, I just sent a random message to my brother. I never thought he would personally go find Joan. I never forgot that night when I received a photo on my phone of Joan, dazed, kneeling on the ground while my brother stood behind holding an umbrella for her. I didn't really know how much that scene meant to Joan. But I knew I could always trap her with what happened 3 years ago. So, after I took my brother's place, I was happy, and kept reminding Joan to be grateful, one way or another, over these 3 years. I liked having her around like she was some little toy in my world. I thought I'd never fall for a stand-in like her. But unexpectedly, this time, Joan left. And she took my heart with her. I'll never see her looking at me with those starry eyes again. And I might never love anyone again.